This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap.
Greetings and salutations from the North Woods of Wisconsin. You have found the Outlap F1 podcast, and this is season 8, episode number 10. This will be the 2026 Monaco GP review show. And you've got Andy, and I am in once again the solo wing formation as my esteemed colleague, Mr. Cody, continues to tour around Japan. Getting text and updates from him. It looks like he's having an awesome time, and I hope that continues. But we have things to talk about here in the U.S., and that is a Monaco GP that was a thing. Let's put it that way. It was a thing. So we're going to get into all that in just a little bit. But as always, if you found our show, welcome along. We're always glad that you're here. You could find us on X, Instagram, Discord, sometimes Reddit, here on YouTube. At Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle. Being where I am, there is absolutely no possibility of doing a video for this recording, so it's just going to be my voice taking you through the Monaco GP in just a little bit. But if you enjoy what you're hearing, you can click a like, you can click a subscribe button, you can comment. That helps the YouTube algorithm. You can also catch us on your favorite podcasting app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We post to those. We post to a bunch of other ones too. And a 5-star review would definitely help us out there. You can email the show, as always, outlapf1@gmail.com. You can shoot us a DM on our different social media channels as well. Thank you so much to Outlap F1 Nation, who has been stepping up and continues to do so. Y'all know the names, but we've got some newbies on here. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Jonathan Scott, Rachel Fleming, Dave Doherty, and now, just recently, it took me a while to figure out who this was, but Brandon Bowler, who I knew and know in my professional capacity, and now I know in the podcast capacity as well. Thank you, Brandon, so much. You have donated some coffee to us. How can you do that? We have a link that we put in our show notes. It's called buymeacoffee.com/outlapf1. It enables you to give us some funding to basically go buy coffee, because Sunday morning was a really early up. The sun was just coming up, and we're in the European season now, so we definitely need some coffee. So $1, $5 all goes into making the show better. Either buys us coffee or it'll buy equipment to keep the show up and running. So we would appreciate everyone who has done so, and y'all are awesome for doing that. All right. Here we go. Hoping not to do quite as much vamping as I did last time. But thank you so much for everybody who did comment that. I hope it went better than I thought it did. I listened back to it and I said, it wasn't too bad. But we're going to get back to a little bit of the tried and true format, but it's going to be just me here talking. So there will definitely be some vamping and some things that I sneak in here that aren't necessarily on the normal program. What we like to start, as we always have to do, with our headline of the day. And I have one from Cody. And if you haven't watched the race, go watch the race and then come back and listen to this, because I have to do a little spoiler because it was set up so perfectly. But anyway, my headline of the day was, wow, things actually happened on a Sunday in Monaco. Usually Monaco is all about the qualifying. That did definitely live up to the hype. But in the end, Kimi Antonelli, man, just a machine that doesn't look like he's going to be stopped at the moment. Max Verstappen Jr., 5 in a row, 5 wins on the bounce. And if it wasn't for the safety cars, or it wasn't for the red flag, which we're going to talk about, he would have lapped the field just about. He had lapped at one point all the way to P. It was just a podium that was on the lead lap. So an absolutely dominating performance from the young Italian, finding his groove. And here comes Cody's headline. I got a text from him after qualifying that said, air quote, and I quote, gonna pray at a Shinto shrine today that Max gets the lead off the line. And I haven't had the heart to text him back, but I'm going to at some point because I haven't know if he's seen the race. Cody, my man, you got to get a new shrine because that did not happen. Max Verstappen had probably the worst start of his career. The engine said, I don't want to race around Monaco. Lots of engines said, we don't want to race around Monaco. But Max's was the first one, and his race was over 10 meters in. Ouch. But before we actually get into the rest of the details about the race, that did see a lot of things happen on Sunday. So we'll actually have, normally for Monaco, I'm always thinking about, well, we should talk more about the qualifying than the race. Qualifying was good too, but we definitely have some things to talk about in the race. But we will take you through our qualifying order. And that saw P22 ended up being Lance Stroll. P21 was Fernando Alonso. P20 was Valtteri Bottas in the Cadillac. P19, Oliver Behrman in the Haas. No big updates for the Haas team, and it's starting to show. P18 was Sergio Perez in the other Cadillac. P17, Esteban Ocon in the other Haas. P16 was Gabby Bortoleto in the Audi. P15 was Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bull. P14 was Franco Colapinto. P13 was Nico Hulkenberg. P12 was Carlos Sainz. P11 was Alex Albon. So neither Williams making it into Q3. That left a door open for the Racing Bull of Liam Lawson, who makes Q3 and lined up on the grid on Sunday in P10. P9 was Pierre Gasly. P8 was Lando Norris. This was surprising. The last year's defending winner, world champion, only managing P8. Ouch. P7 was Oscar Piastri in the other McLaren. We will talk about their struggles. P6 was George Russell in the Mercedes. P5, Isaac Hadjar, Red Bull second seat. Apparently not the big problem for this guy. As he shows up and qualifies quite well in P5. P4 was Charles Leclerc. Ferrari showing early pace early, but coming back a little bit in the actual qualifying. P4 was Lewis Hamilton, the other Ferrari. P3, welcome to the chat, at least at this point in the weekend, was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, who almost did a Max Verstappen lap. But then at the end of qualifying, at the death, Kimi Antonelli takes it away from Max Verstappen with a 112.051 Q3 effort. Yeah, I mean, the first note that I had about qualifying was it felt like Monaco qualifying. You didn't hear the engine doing any of the weird stuff that you've heard in some of the other tracks. This was definitely going to be what you would call an energy-rich track. They did not even allocate any straight mode, so you didn't have to have any sort of extra aid. You got to remember the thing about straight mode. That's an aid to the engine. It's not an aid. It's not like DRS. It's not designed to promote overtaking. It's designed to allow the car to maintain a lap time that looks somewhat competitive or somewhat close to what they were doing last year when they had the completely different engine formula. That's the whole thing about the active aero and the straight mode. Is supposed to allow the engine to, while it's charging, maintain some sort of actual high top speed there. So they take it away from Monaco, and I don't think anybody really missed it because the qualifying itself, like I said, from all the onboards that I was watching, sounded pretty good. At the end of the day, it turns out, the two McLarens, just a struggle bus, man. Bad Friday. They got better in FP3. Looked competitive through Q1 and Q2, but when everybody put the hammer down, they were just, and we're not talking big gaps here. The top 9 are within the 1 second of each other, so we're talking about tenths of a second, but they matter around Monaco for sure. P8 and P7 for the two McLarens is all that they could muster. Positive notes, like I said, Isaac Hadjar having himself, finding his own, finding his form in that second Red Bull seat. You don't see as big of the shadow of Max Verstappen, I think, right now, because he's more angry at the rules. So therefore, he's not concentrating, I think, fully on dominating his teammate, even though he'd like to. Although he did here. He showed up and did a awesome Monaco qualifying effort. to even come close to Kimi Antonelli. He looked like he was going to take provisional pole. And then Antonelli, man, just like I said, you want to talk about guy in a groove. Guy's in a groove, man. 1:12.051. Yeah, it's a couple seconds slower from last year's time, but they got progressively quicker. They got better. So those were the positives. The other struggle buses, the two Aston Martins, yowza. The Cadillacs, the Haas's, team that started out really good, they've come back a bit, and you can kind of see that there. But yeah, I mean, I thought overall the Monaco qualifying spectacle, if you are interested in just that has not changed. That is still drivers pushing the limits, getting close to the wall, pushing it until the millimetric qualifying is what the F1 site always likes to call it. And it's very true. And it rang very true. It was a very entertaining hour worth of qualifying. I thoroughly enjoyed it as a fan for me, even though I wasn't thrilled with the result. But as a spectacle, they got it right, even with all the weird engine stuff. They managed to still put on a pretty darn interesting show. And then we turn to Sunday, and you would normally think, well, usually the case on Sunday is not much is really going to happen. That was not the case, and that started at the start, and I already kind of gave the spoiler away. Kimi Antonelli lines up against Max Verstappen. Max in his best position to get a start. Monaco is still very, very hard to overtake. That is a given. But if Max was going to get the shot, and I think if you look at the season as a whole, the one chink maybe in Kimi Antonelli's armor has been his starts. I think I even texted Cody back and said, I think he was like 4 out of 6 in bad starts. You look at the start in China, he's down in 6. You look at, gets beat even off the line in Canada with Norris on that weird inter-tire thing. But it was going to be where, could he start? And then if he could start and get off the line, that was the biggest question mark going into the race. And sadly, that question was answered about 50 meters in, because Max's engine decided, I don't want to race in the Monaco Grand Prix, and he hit the gas and nothing happened. Don't know exactly what the actual mechanical failure was, but it was clearly the engine did fire up for a little bit. He managed to bring it around, but retires the car after one lap, does not complete a lap, and Max Verstappen gets the dreaded one of many that we're going to find out in this race who get the dreaded DNF. The other non-classified finishers, Valtteri Bottas in the other Cadillac, Ali Behrman in the Haas, Lando Norris, yet again, here in the back markers, another frustrating DNF. Got off the line, maintained his 8th place, gets around Max, was lucky to do so. Pierre Gasly with a nice move to cut him off. Him and his teammate almost kind of came together going up the big hill on the first couple of turns after that, after Saint-Devat. And yeah, he was kind of maintaining an 8th. He was definitely faster than Gasly. The team looked like they were going to try to make some sort of an interesting pit stop strategy. It turns out it looked like what strategy they were trying to employ was running very long on the medium tires and then trying to pit as late as possible instead of trying to do an undercut. We're hoping that Gasly his tires would run out, and then they'd be able to get some laps in clean air and actually go for an overcut, which may have been an interesting strategy, but we never found out how that was going to play out, because the battery on the McLaren yet again seems to conk out. The team saying that it was a power unit related failure. They don't necessarily say that it was the battery, but it started to go out in the middle of the race, and then they defaulted a setting, and it looked like they got it to come back a bit, because I was watching the gaps, and he was basically within half a second of Gasly, and then he would drop back, and it got to almost like 3 seconds, and I'm like, okay, this is terminal. You just think, and then all of a sudden the power unit came back on, and they did some magic work on the steering wheel and a whole lot of instructions. But that fix only lasted another 10 or 15 laps before the second time the thing propped up. It turned out to be terminal. They boxed him to retire, and that was the end of his day. Very, very frustrating day for the defending world champion, defending race winner, for sure. Other non-classified finishers. Now we get into the turn 19 issues that happened. And just to give everybody some background about what happens in Monaco, Monaco is obviously run on city streets. Those streets are open during every time that the race isn't running or there's not running. Close them off. They run a race. They basically do this for a month because they have some historic cars that run on there. Formula E goes there. And then on the actual race weekend, you've got F3, F2, Porsche Super Cup, and Formula One cars all sharing this street circuit. But at night, they open the streets back up, and there's been many a tale of the party going on at Rascasse and all that other things, and, fluids and whatnot spill. So to combat that, they always resurface part of the Monaco circuit every year because it's a public roadway. And you'll see always somewhere around there a darker patch. This year, the darker patch happened to be at the end of the Rascasse hairpin in turn 19. And the preferred racing line is to not necessarily be on the super inside, but you want to take kind of a wide line around it to then punch the gas to get to what used to be the historical DRS zone, the straightest part of the Monaco circuit that goes down the main curve. I'm not going to call it a straight, but to the start-finish line. What was happening, because we'd had so much traffic and these cars, which still do produce a good amount of downforce and tires that get sticky, and it was very warm in Monaco over the course of the weekend, and the sun was beating on it. Part of the tires found themselves wedging themselves into a crack and filled the crack with rubber that then caused the crack to expand and part of the track started to come up. And that ran afoul of Lance Stroll, who all of a sudden, late in the race, or what we thought was going to be late in the race, was it lap 56 of 78, heads into the barrier and causes a safety car. At that point, Kimi Antonelli had lapped all but two other cars. So let's put it in perspective how dominant he was. That's where he was. So that brings out the safety car. That allows, I think, 7 or 8 cars to eventually unlap themselves. They reset. They go again. And then a couple laps into the next stint, Charles Leclerc runs afoul of the same part of the track and hits the barrier in a very, very similar way that Lance Stroll did. Front wing straight into the barrier, instant safety car. But now the focus shifts to what's actually happening with the track surface. And what was happening with the track surface now gets looked at. The race director comes down from the FIA offices and actually has a look at it. And then they red flag the race. So this is something you usually only see if the case of, I think the last time they had a red flag was one of the crazy rain showers that popped up right before the start of the race, and then they didn't want to run it. And that whole thing kind of played itself out. They eventually put on the inner tires and got everybody going again. But red flags in Monaco we haven't seen for a while. And so that now brings everybody back into the pit lane. And we did not know for a good 15, 20 minutes, would they even get this race going again? Because if the track surface is coming up and the FIA declares the surface is unsafe, you're not running. The positive news is they had run all of the laps. They were more than 3/4 distance, so they would have gotten full points. But we didn't know what they were going to do. So they went out, they swept all of the marbles off. They kind of really did a hard sweep of that crack. And eventually, I think they came to the conclusion that, well, it's something that the drivers all know that it's there now, and they're going to have to deal with it. So we got a resumption, a standing start resumption. A standing start resumption that really ran afoul of one Sergio Perez, Sergio Perez had himself an odd day. Let's just put it that way. Sergio Perez lined up in the wrong grid spot on the first standing start of the race and got a penalty for that. Managed to serve it. And with all this other unreliability that kept hitting all of the major players, and we haven't talked about the other thing that was also happening, there was unreliability, and there were pit speeding penalties. Lots and lots of pit speeding penalties. So much so that you almost have to wonder what was going on. Because you see one driver come up with a pit lane speeding investigation, and you know that that's a slam dunk 5-second penalty. But then another driver, and then another driver. I think in the course of the race, there were 6 pit lane speed penalties assessed. And at that point, you almost have to wonder what is going on. So one of the drivers who had ran afoul of the pit lane speed penalty issue was George Russell. George Russell gets one. They have the safety car. He comes into the pits unannounced to his team. Team Mercedes was lucky that this didn't turn into Valtteri Bottas 2.0, the pit stop that, to my knowledge, has still never ended. And does not serve his 5-second penalty. The team went right to work on the car. So that is an insta no-no. So when they did the red flag, you then realize George Russell's in some trouble. George Russell gets a drive-through penalty, so that takes him out of the points. Now, why is all this important? I was talking about Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez, like I said, got in trouble for the first standing start. Basically ended up 2 laps down to the leader, but because of the safety car, he gets a lap back. And because of the red flag, he gets his other lap back, finds himself in a potential P10 to score Cadillac its first point. But, and here's the but, Sergio Perez on the red flag restart, standing start, didn't line up correctly in the grid box. So that becomes a 10-second penalty assessed after the race, even though he was P10 on the road. So that was frustrating. Another person who had some frustration with the stewards, Pierre Gasly. Not 1, but 2 5-second pit lane speeding penalties. None were served. One of the few drivers who actually served his 5-second penalty, even though they disagreed with it, was Oscar Piastri. So Piastri was, I think, running in P7 on the road, and I think there was at one point there was a issue of Piastri was behind Gasly, and then I think it was Hadjar, and he could have potentially made it all the way to the podium from basically finishing P7 on the road. It was kind of crazy, and Russell. So he passes Gasly and Russell after the checkered flag fell because of all of the penalties that are assessed. Because Russell has to serve his drive-through. He's out of the points. Gasly's penalty gets assessed at the line after he crosses. He could have had a podium. He may still have a podium because Alpine have actually declared their right of review and are appealing the decision. These are usually slam dunk. You probably don't have enough evidence. You have to remember they have to come up with new evidence. Don't know if we're going to see that. So a lot of misfortune befuddled a lot of people. And that meant with Perez's penalty, guy who finished the race, and sometimes to finish in the points, sometimes you must first finish, of anybody who you thought was going to score points in Monaco. Did anybody have Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin? I sure as heck didn't. Fernando Alonso comes home in P10 to claim the last point in a weird way. So I'll take you through the order. I probably have missed a story or two. I was trying to recount this in my head. But our non-classified finishers, Max Verstappen, Bottas, Behrman, Norris, Stroll, and Leclerc. Being classified P16 but not finishing was Carlos Sainz. After the 10-second penalty, deserved so much better, but line the car up, man, Sergio Perez. You've got experience. How many times have you done this in your life? Oy, self-inflicted wounds cost Cadillac a valuable point in the standings. Comes home P15. P14 is Franco Colapinto. P13, the first guy who actually finished P10 on the road was Nico Hülkenberg. But Nico Hülkenberg also got a 10-second penalty. So he was in P13. P12 after the drive-through was George Russell. P11 is Gabby Bortoleto. We mentioned Fernando Alonso in P10. And with all this unreliability, it opens the door for other teams to do some scoring. That was the case for Alonso, P10, Ocon, P9. The other Williams of Alex Albon comes home P8, P7. Feel for this guy. Probably should have been on a podium in what is the closest thing to a home race for Pierre Gasly. For Pierre Gasly, comes home P7 after the two penalties. P6, the benefactors of all the craziness. All these guys went out and did is keep their noses clean the whole race. Lindblad in P6 and P5, Liam Lawson. Look at that. The Monaco Casino rewards you. P4 was Oscar Piastri, whose car, quite frankly, that is flattering a result. If you ask me, I don't think the McLaren pace was anywhere. Even in clean air or dirty air or new tires or old tires, didn't seem to matter. And maybe this is just a one-off bogey, but for a team that wants to say it's going to win a race this year, for a team that, by all accounts, should be really challenging the Ferraris for P2, right now just isn't. And let's hope that between Canada, where they were competitive on pace and shot themselves in the foot, and here, where they just weren't competitive at all, that these are the two bogeys, and we move on to a track in Barcelona that hopefully suits that car better. There's a frustrating watch from a fan perspective for me. You see Lando go out again with another DNF. The reason that he was in the 24 championship for as long as he was, and the reason that he won the 25 championship, was the lack of that. Is that if the car could get him to P4, that's where he'd finish. And if the car could get him to P8 on a day, that's where he'd finish. And he would get the most out of those weekends. I don't know if it's just a battery thing or what it is, but he's not able to get the car to the finish line, and therefore he's not scoring any points. So a championship defense looks almost to be an impossibility at this stage. And I know we're only 6 rounds in. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy that we're only a few rounds into this championship and we're already kind of wrapping it. But what Kimi Antonelli's doing is making that case because, we'll talk about him in just a minute. All right. We got all the way to Piastri in P4. P3, a guy who, if you want to talk about overcoming difficulty, Max Verstappen's engine said it didn't want to race around Monaco. Isaac Hadjar's engine said it didn't really want to do much more either. Comes home P3. Solid, very solid. Had to play defense. That car was underpowered for most of the race. Manages to bring it home in P3. A hard-earned podium that he kept. He was also under investigation at one point because I think during the red flag, Red Bull tried to get to the bottom of what was happening to the engine. And I know I saw there was a shot of taking the engine cover off. FIA didn't like that, but apparently they did enough to put the car back together the way that it was, that it satisfied the FIA, so therefore no further action was taken. So Hadjar gets to keep his well-fought-for P3. The benefactor of all the chaos, in my opinion, had to be Lewis Hamilton. who had a fast car, all things considered, but was not really a challenge to Kimi Antonelli. The 6-second gap at the end is flattering because they were telling Antonelli basically to back it down, that this thing was in the bag, and it was. I think before the red flag hit, or before the first safety car, it was like a 23-second gap to P2. So your headline can be just Kimi Antonelli dominated on Sunday. That's your story of his race. Kimi Antonelli got off the line, Max's car dies, and gone. Literally gone. Did a whole overtake on all the field all the way up to P3. That's dominant. I don't care what formula you're talking about. I don't care what type of configuration your cars have. He's at one with that car. It's clearly at one with that car. His teammate is scuffling and struggling and not having it. This car apparently is made for Kimi Antonelli, at least at this stage of the game. And it's looking like this is going to be his championship. There's a ton of time still to go, and he could still falter, but the math gets more and more on his side. George Russell's not even in P2 in the standings anymore when we get there. It's Lewis Hamilton now. But he's got quite a chasm to overcome. And we haven't seen the Ferraris have the ultimate pace to stay with the Mercedes. We've seen cars at times stay with the Mercedes, but the thing that Mercedes is having happen is so much in their favor is it's a different challenger every week, it seems. One race it's the McLarens, one race it's the Ferrari, one race it's Red Bull. That just allows Kimi Antonelli to go sailing off into the distance. Qualifying, not necessarily as dominant, but pulling it out when he needs to, but on race pace, man. At least here. Woo! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Be afraid, the rest of the F1 grid. Be very, very afraid. A young, confident kid in a car that he knows and seems to feel at home in is a dangerous, dangerous thing. And I think unless the tide turns, and it's going to have to turn sharp and quickly, I think you're looking at your 2026 world champion. And I know that's weird to say only a few rounds in. But there is nothing that I see other than the occasional bad start that is hindering this kid. So anyway, that's my thought on the Monaco GP. It was fun. That I think overall that we had some stuff happen. We had some drama mid-race. I was surprised, frankly, at the amount of unreliability, and that Monaco, of all places, is where these engines decided to just all go kablam for whatever reason. Maybe it was the bumps. I think that's probably got a lot to do with it. It's a very bumpy track. Yeah, I can't really explain it. But it was different reliability issues, and then of course the barriers being there caused some chaos. So yeah, that's your Monaco GP in a nutshell, man. All right, I am going to take a quick break, re-rack, come back, tell you what this did to all the standings. If you are a Kimi Antonelli fan, you are sitting really pretty right now. We'll tell you the top 10 of the drivers. We'll talk about the teams. We'll then open it up to your thoughts in the fan email segment. We got our stuff. I will hand out some awards. Call it a day. So come on back.
You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back on in. This is Season 8, Episode number 10 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It is our 2026 Monaco GP review show. You've got Andy, and like I said before, I am in the solo wing formation here. Just wrapped up talking about the Monaco GP. Want to take a look at where this ended up. What did this do to the standings? Well, I said it before the break. If you are a Kimi Antonelli fan, you should be excited and happy because your driver is in P1 of the drivers. 156 points on the season, 66 points clear of his nearest rival, who is now P2, Lewis Hamilton. The Mercedes 1-2 in the drivers has been broken, at least for now, because George Russell had himself a terrible Sunday. So he checks in with P3 on 88 points, 2 points behind the 7-time world champion in Lewis Hamilton. P4. Wait, Monaco only has two flavors for Charles Leclerc: agony or ecstasy, it seems. This was agony with the crash there. No points for him. Comes home. That maintains P4 in the drivers. P5 is Oscar Piastri, who I would say probably had, like I said, the result flatters what his pace was, but he finished, kept his nose clean, and served his penalty. So he got that off of his back, and that proved out to be a good thing for him. He is now P5 in the drivers with 60 points, 2 points in front of the defending world champion, Lando Norris, who has not scored a point since the Canada Sprint. Boy, if there is something that needs to change, in my view, that needs to change quickly. Hard luck case for Max Verstappen this weekend. P7 in the drivers, remains on 43 points. You thought that it could have been something. Team-wise, it does seem like the car's coming, but that unreliability bug bit him today and bit him good. But P8 is Isaac Hadjar, the beneficiary of all of the unreliability issues. The staver off of his own unreliability issues. Goes up to P8 in the drivers to 29 points. P9 is Liam Lawson, one of the bigger benefactors, again, keeping his nose clean. That leads him now to be P9 in the drivers in the Racing Bull at 26 points, tied with Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, who round out the top 10. They are tied with 26 points apiece. Lawson leading on countback. All right, your team standings. P1, Mercedes, way out in front. They are up to 244 points on the season. P2 is Ferrari, solidifying their stance right now in P2 with 165 points. P3, the McLaren charge looked like it was going to be a hard charge. That has fallen off in the last couple weeks. So they are only up to 118 points. P4 is Red Bull. They are up to 72 points on the season. P5 is Alpine with 41. P6 is Racing Bulls with 39. So the P5 battle is on for sure. P7 is Haas. They are up to 21. P8 is Williams. A couple points on the day thanks to Alex Albon. They are up to 11 on the season. P9 is Audi with the 2 points. P10, we had the gravestone given to P11 in the constructors at this point, given where the Honda engine has been. That is no longer the case. P10, it's the Robert Kubica effect, man. You score a point, you score a point. You're now P10, Aston Martin. You have 1 point on the season, and that leaves P11, the Cadillac team. Despite finishing P10 on the road, it was not to be for Sergio Perez. Therefore, they remain on 0 points. All right, you've heard my take on the Monaco GP. It is now time to open it up to your takes on the weekend. Fan email segment. We've got our normal contributors here. We will start with Rachel Fleming, who her and I have been kind of doing the equivalent of F1 therapy sessions at the end of these races because all of our rooting interests just have not done well this season. It's been kind of a frustration from a fan perspective. For from a neutral perspective, I am still excited about the championship, but oh man, my rooting interests are struggling. We're on the struggle bus this year. But she says, well, it wasn't dull at the end. We all know Kimi won in the end and Lewis came second. After that, God knows, we might know the true result by Barcelona. That's not far-fetched. George Russell had the day from hell, so many issues, and almost certainly hasn't scored any points. That ended up proving to be true. Another day, another DNF for Lando. I really am gutted for him. Rachel, I feel you there. Max looks totally fed up of F1. I can't blame him, to be honest. Car failed at the start and he was out. Cody, you got to find yourself a new shrine, buddy. I'm telling you, you got to pray to somebody different because that didn't work. There must have been something up with the pit lane speed limiter thing. It makes no sense. Yeah, I agree. It's either the limiter or the sensor or somebody just calibrated it wrong. The actual button, because I mean, it's Formula One. You hit the button and it's supposed to not let your car go over the speed limit. And all of these violations turned out to be like 0.01 kilometers over the limit. So when you get that many, it does seem to say something is wrong. But I have not seen to date if they're going to do anything. We know Alpine has appealed. Interesting to see what evidence they can bring. And then what do you do? Even if you somehow you can take the 10-second penalties away from Gasly, but other people served them and other people didn't. So I have a funny feeling it's going to end up, they're going to stick with what they have, because how then do you write it in a way that's fair? It's going to be tough, but if Alpine wins, I think what they would get is they would want to get Gasly back up the spots to the podium. So we may yet see a different result than what we know as of now. Also, it was nice to see the Perez overtake or what happened to the Haas cars at the start. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. I certainly didn't see it on the main feed. I know Max being out is major news, but come on, F1. Yeah, when we have an overtake in Monaco, you should probably get it, at least a replay or something somewhere. Hello, that would be major news. So I feel you there. Now for the watches, the Audi watch, just for the briefest moment, Hulk had points, but it was taken away. Bort was behind the milk cart of Alonso at the end. Perez watch, now he may have scored Cadillac. She's doing this right at the end of the race. May have scored Cadillac's first point of the season, but I highly doubt he's keeping it and Perez did lose the point. And the milk cart known as the Aston Martin gets a point. Yeah, I would want to call that the Robert Kubica memorial point, because that's it was that crazy 2019 race in Germany with all the rain and everybody crashing and people on weird tires at weird times. And that ended up Robert Kubica, who just kind of kept circling, got a point. I hearken back to the race I was at Coda, where Alex Rossi almost scored a point for an American in Formula One at the US GP, but he didn't quite make it there. It was P11, but there were points in I think that race where he was almost there, and that's what I keep thinking of. It's the Robert Kubica memorial for that there. But thank you, Rachel, for your thoughts as always. And we will get through. Stay strong. We will get through this. There will be better times ahead. You have to remember that it's why you have to cherish the good moments. Sebastian Vettel said it, I think it was 2013, where he goes, treasure these moments. They don't always come around. You have to treasure when you get a world championship from Lando Norris in the McLaren. At least that's what I tell myself, is I have to cherish that even more so with what's going on now. All right. Dave Doherty has chimed in and he said, well, Monaco is like stepping into a casino and betting on Russian roulette. It's betting on roulette. Yeah, maybe. That's actually not a bad comparison there. I feel for you on the McLaren's unlucky weekend is very true. Heartbreaking. And Verstappen's early DNF really did surprise me. I was looking forward to seeing my Max versus my boy Kimi, but Hadjar had a perfect race, I thought. And Leclerc, I felt for him, but the race surprised me in some ways. My boy Kimi is similar to Lewis and Mika Hakkinen, if you agree. But Monaco really did surprise me. One big mistake and these cars can be out of the race. Doesn't even need to be a mistake. It could be hitting a bump. These cars are, it feels like it's Christmas tree lights. If you shake the Christmas tree lights, they all either the tree burns up or the lights go out and you don't know, you blow a fuse. It's a lot that can go. There's a lot going on in an F1 car that you don't see. And yes, it's a engineering and technological marvel that they don't fail more, given what the ask is. But I counter with saying I think the ask is probably too much. And that's my gripe with the 2026 regulations. That's what Max's gripe is with the 2026 regulations. It's not that it can't work. It's not that it doesn't work. It's like, dang it, can't it work better? To your point about, I wanted to see Max versus Kimi. I would have liked to have seen what Max's race pace was. Could he have stayed with Kimi, or had Max gotten off the line and gotten a start? Could Kimi have tried an overtake? Would it have come down to pit stops and execution? I mean, obviously, we know how the rest of the race played out. We had safety cars, red flags, all that stuff, but you wouldn't have known that at that point. So a lot of the fun questions that you had coming into the race kind of went away once Max kind of left. You definitely, like I said, when we were doing the standings, Leclerc has two emotions in Monaco. He's either on top of the world or his heart is breaking. And we got the latter today. So a nice like P4 for Leclerc would probably be better. Although, he wants to win whenever he's here. And the crowd does respond to him. He is a crowd favorite. I totally respect that. The comparison of Kimi to Lewis and Mika is an interesting one. I hadn't thought of it. The one who I think of, at least now, because it's very reminiscent, he's early Max, in my opinion. Like, Max would always be the hard charger, but would sometimes make a mistake, and the only thing he ever had to figure out was once he got out of his own way, look what happened. Boom, championship, boom, championship, boom, championship, boom, championship. 2023 most dominant results ever. He hasn't even had to figure out how to get out of his own way. It's 5 in a row. Kimi. So, yeah, I think the comparison is Max Verstappen is not by human standards an old person. But you already see what the next one looks like. And I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing that comparison definitely coming to the front. I mean, Mika Hakkinen was just cold as ice and nothing ever flapped him. Kimi gets very flapped on the radio. He gets very excited and needs to get calmed down and has had to be calmed down. You never heard any of that from Mika. Lewis has the uncanny ability to dig deep and find things that you didn't know were there. I don't know that I've seen that in Kimi because he hasn't. I don't know how deeply he's had down. In qualifying, that's true. He's had to dig deep and he's had to fight it off. But I haven't seen a race where from start to end, he had to fight it all the way. We were robbed of that in Canada. We were seeing some of that in Canada, and he was winning when George's car said no more. So the Lewis comparison, I would call that an incomplete. I don't think he's really more like Mika. I think he's more like young Max. And I know Cody might disagree with me. He may be a better version of young Max. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I always struggle with these types of questions because somebody's always going to get upset no matter what I say. So, all drivers mentioned great talents in their own way. Kimi Antonelli is proving to be, like I said, I think he's the next one. And there's nothing that he's done that other than crashing the car in FP1 in Italy, in his first thing in a Formula One car, that says otherwise. All right. Thank you, Dave, for your contribution. Always good questions. Keep them coming. The Formula has chimed in and said, and that is the conclusion of the We Are Checking Grand Prix. These regs have introduced so many complex engine issues. F1 does not need this. Glad we are moving away from it. Yeah, we're going to have to deal with this for 2 more years. And it's hard. It's hard to see when drivers are trying to go out there and do what they do that the cars just say no more. It's very frustrating. I get that. FIA definitely wants to move in another direction. The question is, how soon are we going to see it? We have the framework in place even for next year to get out of this 50-50 split, which I think will help a lot. But you're still going to have the batteries and the power units that are underpowered and straight mode and overtake mode and all that other stuff for the next couple of years. So, yeah, it's just one of these things, I think. Why they went down this route, I get why. They did it because they wanted to get more manufacturers into the sport. It was not a cheap way to do it, but it was a way to entice those manufacturers, Audi, Honda, to come back, Ford to come in. So yeah, I mean, it's price of doing business. Sometimes is you get stuff like this, and yeah, I'm glad they're going away from it too. On a positive note, I have a mint condition Kimi Antonelli Future Stars card that I pulled out of a Topps pack last year. I might want to hang on to that one. If that's true, get that thing into the airproof glass, get it rated, and put it on a shelf and watch it appreciate, because that may fuel your Formula One love for the next 20 years. Yeah, it's he's doing stuff. Kimi Antonelli is doing stuff that the likes of which you haven't seen, I think, since this. It feels like 23 Verstappen kind of all over again in different ways, but it almost feels inevitable that no matter what the rest of the grid throws at this kid, he keeps coming with the goods. So can't say otherwise. Finally, I feel bad for George, truly. About as bad as my city feels for raising my property taxes on me. Yeah, I know Mr. Formula is not a big fan of George Russell. And if you enjoy the Schadenfreude experience of watching George get a little hot under the cuff and annoyed at the rule book, you got your wish this weekend. Yeah, hot under the collar. Why he decided to, because the team told him to stay out. And then I think just in the melee and the craziness and confusion, they tried to do the pit stop, and nobody remembered that, hey, he had a penalty. Or if somebody did, it's one of those, I want to listen to like even the team radio that you don't get, because with somebody screaming on a channel somewhere that says, wait. Don't know exactly. That was weird. But yeah, like I said, if you are, Mr. Formula, into the Schadenfreude of the George Russell downfall, have yourself a moment there, sir. Enjoy. All right. We will hand out some awards. Thank you guys, first and foremost, for your contribution, for giving me somebody to talk back to other than myself. So that I appreciate you guys chiming in with this race. All right, weekly awards. Let's hand out the rubbish. And I'm just going to continue the slam dunk on what the formula said about this is the We Are Checking Grand Prix, because I'm surprised that this is where, of all places, is where the engine formula rate, not so much in an energy starved way, but in a reliability way, the ugly head popped up of these engine regs, that the engines are very, very sensitive and they don't like to take a beating and they break. A lot of teams, I think, were banking on this. I read it across a few teams. This being the last race for a certain engine allocation. That even though our engine went bang, it doesn't matter because we were going to retire that engine after this race anyway. Well, I think you found your limit. I think you found your limit. And I think you're going to see by the end of this year, with so many races still to go, and a lot of hot weather and a lot of beating that these cars are going to do to each other still to go, you're going to see some major league engine penalties in the second half of this season. So you're going to see a qualifying order. That's one thing, and a starting grid that's vastly different. And I don't like that either. That's not good for the sport. That's not good for the people who pay a ton of money to go watch these races and then not know the result until an hour before, because even then, another car breaks and then those guys go to the pit lane. Gabby Bortoletto ended up starting from the pit lane. It wasn't a great starting position, P16, but it was better than P22. Luckily for him, they got it going. Liam Lawson wasn't sure he was even going to start the race. They got it fixed. Kudos to those mechanics. But it's just the overriding theme, and it keeps coming up every weekend. Every weekend is this formula just doesn't work all the way right. And we just got to deal with it because I think they've done everything that they can for the rest of this season. But I was perfectly fine with the lack of engine reliability at the end of last season, and you could see drivers just fight it out on track. I'd rather have that. I'd rather have a simpler model that enables drivers to push when they want to push and not do some of the oddball strategies and deployment stuff that they have to. At least you didn't have to think about it. The word you didn't hear here was deploy. And that was a nice vacation from that. But not from the reliability side of it. All right, rant over there. Analysis paralysis. Mine goes out to the FIA because somebody better check that speed limit radar gun. That's an itchy trigger finger if I saw one. Now, I get in the middle of the race, the FIA's got to go with it. Was in, it was out. It's fair or foul. It's like a line call. You got to make it. But when you have 6 different drivers, third of the grid, different teams, like I was listening to Oscar Piastri's radio, and they told him specifically about that many teams were getting pegged by this. Be careful on the pit entry, and it still happened. Something's weird. I don't know what we're going to find out. We may find out some fallout from it, but something's weird. So my analysis paralysis goes to the FIA, and again, I'm interested to see what the Gasly appeal will be, if that gets even heard. Did they get past the first hurdle of new evidence? We'll see. Yeah, so it's kind of an incomplete at this point, but my analysis paralysis goes out to the FIA. That was strange. Dark horse of the day. I'm going to give this to the law firm of Lindblad and Lawson. Boy, that just sounds good. Injury attorneys who will file your claim for you. Although this will probably move, if it does, I'm not saying probably. That's the wrong word. If the Gasly appeal is successful and he gets restored to the podium, this award goes to Pierre Gasly and the Alpine team. Well, I thought these are better than what they got, but given the result that I have in front of me right now, I got to give this to the 2 racing bulls who did nothing more than keep their noses clean and therefore got some good points. So good for them. And the driver of the day, this one is an easy slam dunk for me. That is Kimi Antonelli, man. Despite safety car restart, second standing restart, Max Verstappen on the first restart. What did he do wrong? Nothing. And kept setting purple laps at lap 74. Dominant performance. The race results don't do it justice as to how dominant this was. Dominated that track. Was one with the car. Clearly the easy driver of the day for me. Hands down. All right, folks, if you have stayed with us or with me this long, you're an awesome human, and I thank you for sticking with me. We've got Barcelona coming up next. I will probably watch qualifying up here, and then I'll definitely be back for the race. Don't think I'm going to get a preview because I don't know that I'm going to have the cabin to myself to be able to talk for an hour like I do today. But anyway, I will continue to follow the stories. We'll see what happens with the Gasly appeal. I imagine it'll get heard Thursday, Friday this week. We'll get some resolution on that. Circuit de Catalunya waits. Should be a better track for some. Hopefully for the McLarens, it's definitely going to be a better track. I sure hope so. And we'll see really what the new pecking order is going to be, because Monaco definitely proved to be the one-off that it was. And we're in the European season, so these races are going to start to come thick and fast. Be here for you. Cody will be back. I think he gets back. I can't ask him to do a 16-hour flight and then join me on a recording. So I may do soloing formation for Spain. After that, he's back. I'm sure he will regale me with all sorts of stories. But my number one thing of advice, Cody, find a new shrine to pray in, bud. For both of our sakes, for Lando and for Max's sake, okay? But anyway, until I next talk to you, thank you again, as always, for listening. We're glad you're here. Stay safe out there. I may recount a story in the next recording about staying safe. Definitely do that. But until then, stay safe, and may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at outlapf1 podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.